Alright, so welcome back to part 5 out of 5 and the final video in my condensed new player guide. So just starting off, I'm going to give a quick rundown of where I ended up after 4 weeks of playing the game. So in normal difficulty, I made it to stage 11 and then I beat 39 waves. I was stuck on that last 40th wave just because in part because my temporary buffs I was using in the fountain ran out, but also just my slime wasn't quite there as far as strength and what I needed to do there. If I wanted to beat that last 40th wave, I could have gone upgrade the Tower of Elements again, got some more buffs there. I mean, there's plenty of things I could have upgraded my other slimes to get overall stat bonuses. Plenty of things I could have done to just kind of get over that last hump. But just as far as my decent push and right out that 4-week cutoff, this is where I ended up getting. And then as far as hard mode, I did make it through stage 6 and then 12 waves, so I progressed decently far through hard mode. And then in hell mode, I made it through stage 3, wave 29. I wasn't able to beat stage 3, but I was able to beat 1 and 2, which were definitely what I needed to do as far as just farming gear and getting a lot stronger. As far as gear and what I continued to focus on during the week, just farming hell stage 2 is really what I ended up doing for the week. So I could end up getting those helmet and accessory pieces to merge my helmet to Mythic +2. I also could have merged my accessory to Mythic +2, but I ended up getting impatient and just scrapping some of those spare Mythics for runes. This is what I did with any additional regular Mythic equipment I ended up farming. I did end up dismantling a few legendary pieces as well. Runes were just a big step in this last week as far as bonus stats and strength in general. Here are the runes I ended up using. Now the runes you're going to get, it is going to be a bit random just depending on what runes you get when you dismantle equipment, and then anytime you go and merge runes, it's random as well. If you haven't, maybe go check out my separate video I have on runes just to kind of help explain that a bit more. You are going to just to be a little careful, make sure you're locking the runes that you do intend on using or that are really just strong runes in general. So the runes I ended up was a bit just determined by chance. These aren't necessarily the ideal runes I would use, but in general, like attack, HP, and attack speed are very good. A critical chance one is good just to make sure you're consistently dealing critical damage. HP, double attack damage is a really good one just as far as damage output. That is definitely one that really did help on stage 10 and 11. And then we got here pretty well the same thing, a critical damage one, some range damage, just because that was really what I was able to get. And then a multi-attack chance can be pretty good. Ideally, if you can do it through runes, either higher rarity runes or depending on the slime you're using, if you can get to 100% multi-attack chance, that definitely does help on certain stages. Like stage 12, it does help quite a bit. So now onto one thing I did end up changing. So when I got to stage 10, one of the biggest issues I ran into was just damage output. The bosses in stage 10 just have a lot of healing that makes beating them pretty miserable. This can be countered to an extent by either getting some stun time, either just directly through the talents, or I did end up unlocking the dragon as well, and I ended up choosing the ice dragon just to get some additional stun time from its ability, which can be helpful in short bursts. But what it really just came down to primarily was I flat out needed more damage, so I ended up resetting Yamlet and then throwing all my experience shards into Yolanda, just because Yolanda is a lot better from a pure damage output perspective due to its passive abilities. So like going through here, Yolanda gets 60% attack here, 80% attack here, then a lot of like bonus critical damage, range damage. When we look at Yamlet's going to be getting lifesteal, a little attack here, but then some HP, regeneration, just not a lot of attack focus. So Yamlet can definitely get to the point where it can clear stage 10 and 11, especially if you go and upgrade like gear, runes, Tower of Elements, and talent upgrades. Yamlet can get there for sure, but it would take a bit. So in the short term, when I just wanted to beat this stage as quick as I could, I did end up just going with Yolanda. So I swapped over to Yolanda, and while Yolanda did have enough attack, I did have to tweak some things as far as getting Tower of Element upgrades and runes to get the survivability where I wanted it to be, just because when you look at Yolanda. Yolanda doesn't have any bonus HP. So just in practice, it's going to be a lot less tanky than Amulet. Amulet, you don't have to worry much because Amulet has these bonus HP right here, and then just its first passive ability, because Amulet doesn't have an active ability. Amulet actually just gets potentially Amulet's entire HP just doubled, which is quite convenient. Just because when you level it up enough, it gets 100% bonus HP. Makes it really hard to kill Amulet, but Amulet, again, is pretty weak just automatically on the attack side of things. So I went I swapped over to Yolanda, and in order to get Yolanda to level 175, I did have to go and buy a couple of these idle 100% bonus idle 1-day chest rewards from the slime shop. And how you do this is basically I would wait till the 6-hour mark of my idle chest. Then I would wait, see what's in there. So in this case, it was a water stone. So I would just go and claim it. Still watching an ad so I get 2. But what I would do is I would time it. So I would wait until I saw a special slime stone in there. And then once I did, I would go to the slime shop, purchase an idle reward bonus plus 100%, and then go back, claim it by watching the ad. So instead of just getting 1 by regular claim or 2 if I watched an ad, I'd actually get a bonus, and then I could double that again. So I could end up getting 4 special slime stones from 1 claim. So you can time that a bit, but you do just have to watch out and see when you actually get a special slime stone in that idle chest reward to make sure you do want to claim it. And then you have to keep pretty on top of it as far as the mine treasure, any other ways you can get some of those special slime stones, because they are harder to get. A couple of other things to get where I did in normal, hard, and hell mode is I would primarily focus on attack, double attack damage percent, and then HP talents. However, I did throw a bit into the stun talents, and then once I unlocked the dragon, a bit into my freezing time for the dragon, just to help with those bosses. One talent I did make sure I went and maxed out was status resistance. This was an important one to level up, especially on certain stages, because it helps with various debuffs enemies would place, like an attack speed debuff or an attack damage debuff, where the enemy would just decrease the amount of attack damage or how fast your slimes would attack. By maxing this out, you just really negate the effectiveness of that a lot, and it makes your slimes a lot stronger there, because sometimes they'll debuff your attack damage, your attack speed, or even lifesteal. One other thing that I did just want to make a note on that really did help with my slime strength is making sure I went and upgraded all the slimes that I could to get the bonus slime stats for all slimes. This is something they added in a more recent update. So basically how it works is the level of all your slimes goes and factors into this percent bonus that gives you a bonus percent stat bonus for your primary slime that you're actively using. So really, even if you hit the level cap, so in this case I hit the level cap for Yolanda, it still made sense to go and just upgrade every slime I could as far as I can, just because, and I'll show you it real quick here. So I'll go and level down all these slimes, so I only have a 9.72% slime bonus. You go look, I have about 770 attack, 464 HP. But if I go throw all this just experience material back in here, level up the slime as much as I can, and this is just something you're going to want to constantly do, and why it just makes sense to keep on farming. We're now up to 780 attack, 475 HP. So while it's not just super game breaking, it definitely is helpful bonus stats, and the more you just level up and get more slimes, it does become more important. So just continuing to farm, leveling up those slimes is a pretty key item. So as far as tips for the actual gameplay and beating stage 10, 11, there's a couple of tricks to be aware of. So stage 10 in particular can be a pain for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is if you end up using Yolanda and you don't have a ton of HP, one of the things that you'll notice is on certain stages, especially later, different enemies will be able to deal bleed damage to you. So you can end up actually dying in between waves even if you aren't currently being attacked. A way to get around this is by unlocking the Ent talent and then setting it to manual. So if you go to settings, I've set my Ent and my dragon to manual. And what you're going to do is you're going to kind of just time it. So before the wave, you can either slow it down or you can keep doing it. So about right now, I'm going to throw my Ent out, and it doesn't really matter until you get some of these ranged enemies that can actually get to you. But throwing that Ent out, and so it can just really, by timing it, that Ent will soak up all that bleed damage instead. It will get targeted, and so your slime doesn't really have to worry about dying at all. And so really beyond like wave 10, especially those last 20 waves, that is something I basically did every wave. Eventually you won't need to do this, but for the first clear, that's what I had to do, just because Yolanda didn't have enough shield HP and health. The other thing I focused on was a similar thing with the dragon. So I would save my dragon for the dragon talent for the boss waves, and then when it was time to that boss appeared, then I would time it and use the ability so it would go and stun the boss, and so the boss wouldn't heal or just deal an insane amount of damage to me. So if we go right here, and obviously this isn't quite as effective just because we don't have a boss on the screen, but say I saw a big enemy on the screen, what you can do, you can time it. I did try and slow it down a lot. The dragon will freeze it in its place, and then just allowing your slime to deal a lot of damage. You are going to want to make sure you watch the boss though, make sure it actually is on the screen, because if you end up just freezing it or other enemies outside of your slime's attack range, we're seeing some of this bleed damage now, it's not going to help you at all, and it can actually hurt you. So you are going to want to make sure the boss and other enemies are on the screen before timing and using that dragon ability. The Ent timing wasn't quite as important for chapter 11, but it was still helpful. The dragon timing was pretty crucial for the boss. One thing I would note as far as chapter 11, once I cleared chapter 10, it was pretty easy to progress through, but once I beat that chapter 10, clearing it in just its totality is still probably harder, but not quite as a brutal encounter with that first boss. I did feel like chapter 10 was definitely just a really steep difficulty increase. Finally, one of the things to potentially take advantage of is the fountain in the slime village that I mentioned. So you can spend some tears and gold to get temporary buffs like attack, critical chance, multi-attack, HP, etc. That can be really helpful when making a big push. Now these are only temporary buffs, and they cost a chunk of gold in order to use them. So the higher rarity tiers will give you higher rarity temporary buffs. In general, you should be saving your gold tiers for later, just because those are more expensive to use, as well as you actually get better chances of permanent buffs if you've already leveled up your fountain summoning effect quite a bit. So you typically are going to want to hold off on waiting to use those gold tiers, but even the purple tiers can give you pretty good temporary buffs. So just make sure, because these are expenses as far as the gold cost, if you haven't already like max talents and Tower of Elements out, use these wisely and time accordingly when you want to do those big push. I did end up using some of these temporary buffs in order to clear chapter 10. You're going to just want to use different temporary buffs when you're trying to clear different chapters. So for like chapter 10, it made sense to get just more attack damage, or depending on if you're using Yolanda, some more like survivability buffs might be helpful. For some of the later chapters in either hard or hell mode, hit rate was actually a really good one, just because they require a lot of hit rate for those stages. So you can kind of use those accordingly, use different buffs for different situations. As far as just progressing further in hard and hell mode, it is much of the same tactics, but it gets a little more complicated with different slime combinations you can try, because you can use like up to 3 slimes in hell mode and then 2 slimes in hard mode. So just playing around with those different slime combinations, and then just each stage having different stage buffs and debuffs. Different slimes are more effective on different stages, so you do kind of have to play around with that and adjust your team accordingly. That's it for this video. I hope this helps. I'm probably going to take a bit of a break on recording Slime Castle specific guides to try and focus on other games and just different videos. I'm not ruling this out in the future. I'll probably kind of do it on a as request basis, but I just do want to make more videos, and it's fun to do that. So just because of the cadence of one update's release, it's probably going to be a bit more or less frequent. But if you have any requests, feel free to reach out. If you have any questions in general, I'll try my best to reply or make a video when it's appropriate. I'm always glad to help, and I'll still be around. Thanks for watching.